Welcome to the show. I'm Ryan McNiece, and this is the Scholar Series. We're here at Gonzaga University School of Law, and we're with Kim Pearson, Associate Professor and Associate Dean here at the Law School. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm so glad that you're interested in talking about scholarship.
Well, I think the whole idea behind the Scholarship Series is the plethora of knowledge that the professors here at Gonzaga Law School have that oftentimes, whether it be the students or the general public, the community, and within our nation, don't necessarily see that there is so much scholarly work being done by the faculty. And so this was an opportunity to sit down with you and discuss what some of your passions have been and the ideas behind your approach within the classroom, within the law school setting, and your background, a lot of experience in the sense that you spent 2 years on the faculty at UCLA, I believe.
I was a law teaching fellow at the Williams Institute, which is housed at UCLA School of Law. The Williams Institute is a non-advocacy think tank, so they were able to train me in the work of a law professor and provide resources, and it was just a really fantastic time, and I'm so grateful that I had that. Because prior to that, I had been in practice and, of course, going through law school, I'd always had an interest in writing. I also have a master's degree in literature, and so for a long time, I had really wondered about how to bring everything together, because I had decided not to go on for a PhD in literature. I found it a little bit too abstract, and I really wanted to have an impact in people's lives in the day-to-day. So, some people plan their whole lives about, around being a lawyer and going to law school, but I really kind of fell into it, and it was one of the happiest accidents I've had. Because a friend said, don't go on for a PhD, try going to law school. So I did, and I found it immensely rewarding in the sense that there was this really exciting melding of the very abstract, the theoretical, and the practical. So there's a way to actually touch people's lives. So one of my favorite pieces of scholarship is a piece that I wrote while I was with the Williams Institute, and I had a lot of support from the critical race theory faculty. I did a piece about LGBT parents and race, and it was, I was very lucky and it was placed quite well, but it's the kind of article that most people would not be able to approach. It's, it's for academics, and I think a lot of people sort of find that kind of writing very particular to a field.
A particular audience.
Right. So I was able to do a write-down, which means that I could take the main idea and write it in a way that judges and practitioners who are in a hurry, they have very high demands on their time, could very quickly sort of get the essence of my argument and see how it works together, and then it's distributed. And
maybe parlay that or assimilate that into their, either the classroom.
So after that, I just, I had done that. It was like a very particular kind of passion project for me. And I thought, nothing will ever come of it. I'm so, I'm just glad I did.
Yeah, approached it with humility.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah, well, you just sort of throw things out there and hope that it'll be meaningful for somebody.
Absolutely.
And it turns out that it was cited later in a court decision. And it was not the super esoteric one, but it was the one that I wrote for bench and bar, and so I was really grateful that I did it.
So a very pragmatic experience in the sense that it probably kind of catapulted you into the sense that what I write and the work that I do makes a difference.
Absolutely. So I couldn't have written the second piece if I hadn't done all of the really difficult research in writing that article. Probably took me about 2 years of almost daily grinding away. Maybe 14, 15 hours long days, because legal research is very demanding, it's very critical, and it requires the kind of deep thinking that a lot of people just don't have the luxury to spend on these particular problems, right? So this is one of those things where some people might look at it from the outside as being a useless vanity project, but these are the kinds of problems that are so complex and really at the heart of what we do as lawyers, that we have different people in our profession doing different things. So I have no doubt that there are wonderful litigators out there, and there are wonderful people doing legislation and policy work, but my particular passion is around doing the kind of problem solving and deep thinking around really complex things that, you know, sort of tie issues from multiple areas and bring them together and help us think about these problems in a new way.
I think you make a good point. It's the different pieces of the puzzle. As you said, you have the, excuse me, you have the legislator, you have the litigator, but you're approaching the law from a standpoint where you're taking the pieces in your background within the environment, whether it be UCLA or here at Gonzaga Law School, with the opportunities to parlay that in the classroom to lawyers that in the future are going to go out and hopefully pragmatically move these issues forward. It sounds like that environment has been what you were looking for here at Gonzaga.
Yes. When I was on the market looking, I interviewed at a number of schools, but I felt that Gonzaga was a good fit for me because it was one of the few places where teaching and scholarship were both valued. Not that there aren't many wonderful schools out there, but this is a particular kind of school. We have a lot of students that are from the region and are very invested in having an experience around the Jesuit educational experience, and they want something more than just, say, a brick and mortar experience where you can go take the bar and then you're done.
Well, I think, Kim, as you're describing, there is multiple parts to your role here at the law school. There is the teaching and our faculty in the classroom in front of students, as well as you described just a little bit ago, tedious, long hours that you can passionately put into the research and scholarship aspect. But they, I think as you're describing, maybe done at a separate time, but can be put together to move the whole puzzle forward.
Oh, absolutely. I constantly find things and take them into my classroom. I feel like my job, aside from teaching my students foundational legal principles like contracts,
right,
is to teach them how to learn for themselves so that they become lifelong learners, which sounds like a very cliched thing, but
makes a difference.
They need to know what the field is doing, and academics really help provide that view to young lawyers so that they can constantly check their own thinking and wonder, okay, am I really thinking about this as critically as possible? Am I just a cog? No, you have a bigger role. You're a leader in the community. I like to think of the lawyers that we send out as public intellectuals. You're not just, you know, checking boxes or filling out forms. You stand for something more, and I want the students to have the more.
And I appreciate that, because I think each student, each to-be lawyer, then lawyer, has that opportunity. Whether they choose that opportunity is a different thing altogether. But I think if that's your goal, that's certainly refreshing. Because,
well, I hope so.
Well, it should be, because you're hoping folks are in law school for the right reason. And I think that's what you're trying to direct through your teaching.
Well, I think we get a lot of really, really great students here, and they're very talented, they're very inspired, they tend to do things that other students, you know, might be reluctant to do. They'll give up vacation time to go do service projects, they'll go above and beyond. I find them very hardworking, which is fantastic.
Do you feel like they challenge you as well?
I think it's impossible to be in a classroom and not have the back and forth. Any great teacher is always a student, and I, you know, aspire to be a great teacher. It's just so much fun.
Well, Gonzaga obviously is fortunate to have you
Oh,
here
thank you.
on
You're
the
so
team.
nice.
And we've been talking about the scholarship, also teaching in the classroom. You're going to be adding some admin to that puzzle as well as an associate dean. Are you excited about that prospect as well?
Yes, and like anything I go into that's a new challenge, I'm thoughtful and I hope careful, and I depend on the kindness of others as I learn my way.
Well, there's a lot of There's a lot of great people within this organization. I want to focus on a couple of your most recent works, and I'll read some of the titles because I'm interested in how it came to be that I think you're giving a good description of your passions and how you brought your passions to the classroom. But maybe dig a little deeper on why these specific publications and how you feel through your research, what type of effect those have had, whether it be in the classroom, within the community, within the law. Publication that I think is forthcoming here in 2018, Racial Anxieties and Adoption, a response to In the Name of the Child, Race, Gender, and Economics and Adoptive, Couple v. Baby Girl. Tell me a little bit about that.
So this is a co-authored piece. One of my close friends and I put this together based on a series of blog posts we did right when the decision adoptive couple versus baby girl came down. It's a Supreme Court case where a father who's part of the Cherokee tribe had some cross-jurisdictional issues and eventually lost legal custody of the child. And at the heart of the case was a question about the Indian Child Welfare Act and whether or not it covered this particular father. So it implicated questions about race, political status, marital status. The father was unmarried at the time. The role of adoptive parents that use particular agencies that might target certain families and use certain states that have more forgiving rules around adoption. And then we compared that case with the Cramblett complaint, which was a white couple, a lesbian couple that used a sperm donor bank and they, quote, used the wrong sperm, and then they sued for wrongful birth because the child had an African-American father instead of the white father that they had originally chosen. And so again, we have these questions of race and expectations around children. And it's very interesting because it's one of the few places where we really allow people to state bald preferences around race. In other areas of the law, anytime we talk about race, it's sort of the third rail. We don't really want to talk about it. We get very uncomfortable. We're not really sure what it means. And most of the laws around race are really geared toward protecting people from bad things like discrimination, bias, stigma. But in the realm of children's law, and it really is actually parents' law, because children don't have the protections.
Right, here in Washington, we hear in the best interest of the child is the overall premise, however.
But really it's geared toward what parents want. So I guess the other area where you might have some of this is in, say, dating apps, where you can prefer, and you can say things like, no Asians, please, only white men, or only African-American women.
Is that actually boxes that can be checked?
Those are boxes that can be checked, and they've done empirical studies on this to sort of see where people will choose when they have those things presented to them. And it's troubling.
That's interesting. Yeah, I wasn't familiar
on
with
many
that.
levels, because we're also a country that has a long history of both explicitly and implicitly supporting eugenics. So as you look at not just this one case in and of itself, but in the context of eugenics practiced through the law and supported by a variety of different kinds of laws, so you have family law, you have mental health law, you have criminal law. All of these things are geared toward preserving certain kinds of families and sort of discouraging other families from coming into existence or continuing on to have the same sorts of legal protections.
And how, with this particular publication, and we'll touch on several other publications that you've recently had, how do you see this particular work making its way practically, whether it be into the classroom and those particular students moving that information, challenging their opinions this way or that, and moving it forward into the community. But specifically with your work, do you foresee that most likely being cited in cases coming up?
So it's always a surprise, a delightful surprise, when my work gets cited, but I don't really do it for the citations, because sometimes courts might cite your work and it's not exactly the point you had hoped to get across.
Like,
So there's
I didn't
always that
actually
risk.
mean that. Yeah, that's interesting. Cited for the wrong reason. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I think about as the immediate benefit, so this piece that I did, as I was doing all of the research for it, I read a number of books, like The War Against the Weak and the Carrie Buck story, and it helped me see things in a new way. So I don't know if you've seen the recent bar questions around family law, but they're very much about constitutional protection and privacy. And so I've always had that at the core of my class, but through various years, I've kind of shifted the lens a little bit, and I might talk about gender, or I might talk about economic inequality. But as I was doing this research, I found myself thinking, what if this entire class is really an exercise in eugenics, and can I ask my students to think through something this difficult? And not only did they rise to the challenge, but it made them think really hard about the role that they play on an everyday basis when they're making decisions around families. And so to my mind, that was super exciting. It was exactly what I'd hoped for. At one point, very early on when I was teaching this course, I made the mistake of having my students sit down with their whatever kind of partner they had, whether it was a roommate or a romantic partner, a spouse, and write down a list of things that they did in the household and then compare them to see if they would sign a contract to live with that person.
But you've been doing a good job describing today how you're combining the scholarship and even beyond scholarship, your interests and your passions, and how those passions equate in a classroom where those students are now going home and asking similar questions. That's what's exciting, and to me, that's what the law school experience is about. It's the law school experience I had here at Gonzaga, and
I'm so glad to hear that.
It's a luxury. It's an absolute luxury.
I think it is. I think having people that are as excited as I am about the law, because I tell you, the students here are fantastic. It just makes everything so much better.
Well, you indicated earlier, you have litigators, you have legislators, you have daily practitioners, transactional, et cetera. Well, the students that you're having an effect on are ultimately, in one way or the other, going to be that legislator. He or she is going to be out there, the assembly floor in Washington State or in Idaho or in Rhode Island, et cetera, hopefully asking those difficult questions. And you, I thought, said very well, can I challenge these students? Can they go this far? Can they work through these complex ideas? Yes, they can, and yes, they will have to.
Well, that's one of my life goals, really, is to help students really feel empowered. I tell them all the time, in 2 minutes, you're going to be the expert. You're going to be the one that people are looking to make these decisions, to give good advice, to have professional judgment. So don't look to me, don't look to external sources. You need to really figure out how to think through these problems yourself, learn how to talk to other people, to shape your own ideas, and to have some kind of moral compass. It's not my job to teach people how to think or to tell them the ability to think,
right? Not how to think one way or the other, but how to think and critically think. I think would be kind of the law school catchphrase. But to think through on their own how to assess a situation and then figure out where they want to stand on it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that has troubled me for a long time is that for students, and I don't think this is particular or unique to Gonzaga students, I think it's a general issue, which is that students that get trained for tests, they're constantly looking for the right answer. And you know.
The bullet points, the lists, et cetera. They're not thinking it through.
Right, or they want to get enough practice so that they can like hit it out of the park the first time. And we have to have lots of conversations about being okay with failure. When is it okay to fail? When do you need to, you know, make sure that you're doing enough work so that you can set the conditions so that you aren't failing? But being okay with failure when it does happen and learning from it, it's very difficult. And I think that's why students continue to find it very challenging to sort of look inside themselves and say, oh, I have the ability and the power to do this very difficult thing.
Mm-hmm. And to use that power wisely.
Absolutely.
And yet on the flip side, that's the really exciting aspect, for me included, is the collaboration within our legal community. And within the Gonzaga legal community, Spokane in and of itself has a very large Gonzaga following in terms of Gonzaga alums, but throughout Washington, throughout the country, that collaboration, I think, is what's exciting when you're presented with new issues in any given area, whether it be different areas of litigation, et cetera. It's exciting to reach out to fellow alums and or other attorneys and have those challenging, critical thinking conversations and see how you push these issues forward.
I think there is something very special about students in the Gonzaga community and alums.
Mm-hmm.
I think not only is there a lot of loyalty, but there is something special that happens, the holistic education, this commitment to service, the commitment to working hard. I don't have to say things like, the client sitting across from you might have scraped up their last $5,000. Don't waste it. They already know.
Right.
And I think a lot of that comes from a very deep sense of moral responsibility and goodness. I mean, I just sort of use a banal term, but
No, it's true.
It can't be sort of undervalued.
Well, and I think, as we touched on earlier in the conversation, the Jesuit mission here at Gonzaga is a different piece of the puzzle that isn't found at all universities and or law schools. It is a piece of the educational goal here at Gonzaga is to train the whole person. Law schools can get this idea of that it is a trade school of teaching lawyers, but it's teaching the whole person. I think Gonzaga does an exceptional job in that category.
Absolutely. I think what's really fantastic too is that within this, what some people might look at and say, oh, it's a religious school, it's a private school, can you really do the kind of cutting edge work that you have always wanted to do? I think you can look at my record and see the kind of support that I've had over the years and say, yes, we have the kind of freedom, both academically and personally, to pursue these really difficult questions without fear of any kind of reprisal.
Yeah, any type of retribution. I'd like, before our time is up, touch on one more of your articles in our publications in 2017, Child Custody Issues in the Context of LGBTQ Divorce and Relationship Dissolution. This is a topic that in our own practice, you're seeing more and more of these complex issues that bring in several areas of the law as they are coming together in these complex court decisions. Tell me about that publication.
Well, I'm really excited about this one. A couple of friends of mine put together a fantastic book proposal, took it to Oxford University Press, and we've been working on our individual parts. There are a whole bunch of us that are from various different fields. So it's an interdisciplinary book, it's a legal book, it's a reference book, and the idea is this is one of the few handbooks out there for LGBTQ divorce and relationship dissolution.
So it could be a real front runner in the discussion.
We hope so. It's great. And the reason that I'm so excited about my particular contribution is that it's also one of the capstone pieces for this research agenda that I've been working on for multiple years around the value of identity and passing it on and how that gets supported or discouraged in court decisions. And it's just so exciting.
It's fascinating, actually.
It's going to be in print soon, and I'm.
When is it expected to be in print?
I think it's coming out sometime this year.
Well, it's exciting. And Kim, again, it's refreshing to me as a legal practitioner to see here at Gonzaga and taking your experience from your lengthy background of scholarship at UCLA, now fortunate to have you here at Gonzaga, and you taking those passions and those goals and that a real focus on training the whole person here at Gonzaga appreciate what you do, and thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.